take us back to the beginning. What did that look like? Were there any hesitations or fears that you had getting into the rental space, or did you dive in super confident about it?
Well, I'm actually pretty confident about the decisions that I make. But I can't say didn't by any means that I didn't learn a lot in the process. Absolutely. You can find information online and you can search all you want and you can take that approach if that's how you want to. But what really is beneficial is to learn from people who've done it before. The confidence that I feel now and that I can say I had in retrospect might be colored by the fact that I know how to do it. And at the time, I might have had some doubts. I don't remember them, but it's quite possible that I did. But I did know that we had a strong tourism draw where I was, and that was really the key. So
Mm,
even if I'm a marketing professional and I always have been by trade, I didn't know necessarily that I could draw in enough people to make the economics work. And that was really helpful that there was already a marketing engine for the park itself. And I think that that is a factor around what type of rental a person chooses. If you're in a high tourism area, you might choose a short term rental. And if you're not, you really want to think about midterm rentals or long term rentals as a better alternative for that reason, because
yeah.
occupancy has a huge impact on how beneficial the investment is going to be for you.
That makes a lot of sense because I do a lot of Airbnbs or different things when I'm traveling. And it's because I'm going to a specific place, like a national park or whatever we're doing. So, having an attraction nearby probably will give you a little bit more bang for your buck. Now, I know we talk about rentals in all different forms. So, you have your short term rentals, your long term rentals. You have the short term, a lot of times, like Airbnbs, you're renting a space in your house. You have a full fledged house that you're renting out completely. I know you work a lot with what space do you have and how can you turn it into a rental? Can you talk to me a little bit about what that looks like? Like, how can we think about our space as being maybe a boost in our income that we wouldn't have even realized we had?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a big part of it. So we talked about where I started, where it was a dedicated property. And I went into that with the intent, knowing that I was going to be renting it out. But here at home, we have also what's called an accessory dwelling unit that we rent, which a lot of people have. So it's a space over your garage.
Mm,
A lot of people think of that as a bonus room. Obviously, you have to have water, you have to have access to a bathroom, and ideally a private entrance just for security for you and for them. But that wasn't a space that I ever considered being able to rent. And the only reason it came up is because that was my office space. I was a remote worker and I had a serious accident and I couldn't walk across the driveway anymore. I had to relearn how to walk over the course of 6 or 9 months. And a carpenter friend said, you can make that an Airbnb. And I thought, no, they're never going to come to my rural town. Why would they do that? And they did. So that became a short term rental for us. I was stunned. I furnished it with secondhand furniture and leftover furniture. But one of the things that I want to share is that became a midterm rental for us because that was the better choice. And it, in fact, has also operated as a long term rental for us because that was the better choice. So it is important for people to think about their own lifestyle as well as what the property can do and what the local market draw is, because it's not always obvious that a short term rental is necessarily the best solution for you and your property.
that's a really good point. And I was just as you were talking, I'm thinking, how do you make that decision? Are there any telltales, anything that we should think about in terms of do we make it a short term like an Airbnb versus a mid versus a long? And what does that look like?
So, a really important pivot point is around how hands on you want to be. Now, if you are a short term rental owner, and especially if you want to be involved, there is a lot of hands on work that you're going to be doing. And primarily that's around turnovers. Now, if you're in an area where you can hire a cleaning staff and they're reliably available all the time, never going to fail you, then you can potentially do short-term rentals and still enable it to be an adjunct source of income as opposed to a primary source of income, because then the demand on your time is not as much if you're able to delegate some things. But if you're not, like in the case of this particular ADU that I talked about as being at our home, we're half an hour from the seaside. All the cleaning staff wants to be down there. They don't want to drive half an hour in the opposite direction to clean one unit when they can be down at the seaside cleaning a lot of other units, which meant that we were training over the house. We were cleaning it every couple of days, every 3 days. That wasn't compatible with my lifestyle. I didn't really enjoy being a house cleaner, and I didn't want to have to do that in the middle of a workday while I was doing other things. So for us, a midterm solution made a lot more sense. And so that's what I think I want people to consider is it's a time commitment in some form. And if you don't want to have hands-on and you do want to have a short-term rental, then you are paying someone else to do that, and that impacts your income. So you want to think about what really works with your lifestyle. How much time do you want to put into it? And if you want it to kind of run in a passive way, that's really a midterm or a long-term rental.
Hmm. That makes a lot of sense. And kind of considering the location you are, the capacity you have, what does that all look like? Who's doing the cleaning of it? Lots to go into it. How hard is it to get a rental up and ready to go? Is there a lot of legalese that has to happen? What does that look like?
So that's a really key point, and it's the starting point that you can't ignore, which is to find out what is allowed in your area. So, obviously some of these properties or available spaces to rent are co-located with you and some aren't. But wherever that municipality is, you need to understand what their regulations are about the different types of rentals, and they're not always the same. So a short-term rental in your area may have a cap on it. It may have a different tax on it. It may have regulations that you need to understand. And so you're going to go down to the local jurisdiction and get that information. And then it may be different for anybody over 6 months, which is really a midterm play. And then anything, longer than that, you might not even be paying taxes for those rentals, whereas you are in a short-term situation. So you need to find out if you have to register. You need to find out what the requirements are. And don't skip that part because it can be so darn costly if you run an illegal unit. Down the road, it's not worth it. Just find out what the town will allow, what the city will allow, and align with that.
Mm, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. I'm very possessive of my property. I'm like, why do they tell me what I can do and what I can't do? Right. But it's definitely better to be on the legal side, have it all hashed out, and knowing that you're doing it the way it's supposed to, so that especially like I can assume like even audits or different things like that could come into play, and you could get into a lot of trouble if you're not doing it right. So setting it up right from the start makes sense. I'm interested too. Is there anything that surprised you about the rental business once you like got into it initially or once you've been in it for a while?
I guess what surprised me is how friendly people are and how appreciative people are and how respectful they are of property. There's a lot of concern about liability and risk and theft and insurance. And I advise everybody to take that into account. I would never rent a property without insurance. You talk about setup. You want to make sure you have rental insurance. That's different than having homeowners insurance. And you do want to have a conversation with a CPA if you have one. And if you don't, you want to understand the difference between Schedule C and Schedule E. Let me just park that thought for your taxes, speaking of an audit. But I do feel that on the whole, people are kind, things go well, the property is appreciated. We get all 5-star reviews. I mean, if you do your job well, then it will reward you. It does. I'm not saying that there isn't work involved, but it's not as hard, I think, as people imagine, as long as you know the right things to check and the right things to do, um, then I've been pleasantly surprised. I mean, we sent our kids to private school and we sent our kids to private college and they graduated without debt. That's huge. So um, it can go well if you make a good effort.
Mhm. That's one of the things I love about your story is that you used the rental income to help fund your children's education. And I think about that like, what are some visions, some things that we can do by adding that income into our lives? So for listeners, it might not be funding your children's education because maybe you don't have children, but what is it that that could help you do? And for me, I think about it like, well, it could help me retire earlier than I think I will be working, right? Like, so what are those different things and aspects that I can do? And that's one of the things that I wanted to talk with you about here, Joy, too, is that sometimes we put our eggs all in one basket per se. And sometimes like as business owners, I know I talk about this a lot is like focusing on one thing at a time or focusing on, but that doesn't mean not having multiple streams of income coming in because it's important for us to kind of widen that net. So when it comes to the rental space, is there anything that you teach business owners in order to like add that? Any wisdom on why it's important to add another stream of income while we're building our online businesses? What can that look like?
I think it's absolutely essential to diversify as opposed to having all your eggs in one basket. So whether you're driving your own online business or whether you're working for an employer, it's really helpful to have an adjunct source of income. The thing that I think that people maybe underappreciate is, sure, there's an upfront effort and then it's an engine that runs. You can't necessarily say it's 100% passive income. You are going to touch it here and there, but it is so darn easy to run a short-term rental, a mid-term rental, even a long-term rental from your phone once it's up and running. And to have that extra income coming in to create security, to build a rainy day fund, to enable you to retire sooner, to have a bonus medical fund, a vacation fund, all of those things are wonderfully beneficial, not to mention the property itself, whatever this bonus space is an added asset in your portfolio of financial strength. So it it only makes sense to me, in addition to the fact that it's something that an early mentor said, it's OPM, right? It's other people's money that you are, using to build that strength and that security, but you're giving them a rewarding experience in return.
Mm.
So it's a win-win situation.
Yeah. And I also think about it like, let's say you have a house and you are living in like some of the space and not all of the space, and there is a room or the basement of your house or the bonus room of your house that you could turn into a rental property. One thing I think about is we could use those funds to actually fuel our online businesses to get those on. And then we don't have to think about where's the money going to come from? How am I going to pay for how am I going to invest in my business? We can use the property funds to be able to invest in your business, get that fueling, and then you have two streams of income coming in too. I think that's such a
Absolutely.
brilliant idea.
Yeah, that's what diversification is all about, right? So that if you have a slow moment in one, or even if you need funding from the other source, then you've got that. And I mean, all of us can benefit from having that added source of income for developing an online business or increasing your quality of life, whatever is best for you.
Yeah. One thing I think about because I talk all about streamlining, keeping things simple, automating what you can. I know that you have built systems that streamline your rental operations. What are some things that we can somewhat automate or create? What kind of simple systems can we create in the rental space?
Yeah, so I think it's really important to simplify. And I think that's a piece that people get intimidated about up front. Yes, there is a regulatory concern. Yes, you want to understand the tax implications, but you can simplify the creation of the unit, the furnishing of the unit. You might be surprised at pieces that you have. If anything, you want to take furniture out and create a simple environment. You want to simplify the process of interacting with guests. You want to personalize it. You don't want to 100% automate it, but you want to use the automation tools that are available to you through the online travel agents if you're doing short-term rentals like Vrbo and Airbnb. Um, and if you use those tools to interact with your guests, then the process is fairly simple for you once you've set it up. You have your photos, you have your property, you have your communications, and now you simply are getting notified on your phone and making sure that your cleaning staff shows up.
I love it.
So it is something that can be simplified, and you're absolutely right. I do show people exactly what that looks like and how to do it to make it a nice side hustle. The whole game is for it to be a low hassle side hustle so that you can be living your life in whatever primary platform you want to be doing that in.
So good. So if you were to walk someone who's brand new to the rental space, who's like, I'm just curious, I want to get this going, what would be the first few steps that we should consider to do it well and mindfully to get started?
Understand what are the regulations in your town. What can you rent? What can you not rent? What are the requirements? And does the code office have any requirements? For example, if you're going to rent your accessory dwelling unit, do you need to expand your septic field, or do you need to register the property as a rental? Make sure that you're doing that. The legal piece, step one. Step two, make sure that if you were a guest there, you understand what you would want. Is there a private entrance? Can I let myself in by myself? Is there a code on the door? Do I have the amenities in the building that I would want? And then create brilliant photography. You don't want to ever oversell. You don't want to create something that someone's going to be disappointed when they arrive and find it's not really true. You want those 5-star reviews. And honestly, after that, you're just crafting the story for whatever platform you're using, because people are going to find it online 100%. So you're crafting that story, and then you're just going to be a responsive host. And that is the top line.
Hmm. You're crafting the story. I love that. And I love how you mentioned, like, look at the space as if you're the guest. What are the things that you would want? That seems like it would make that setup quite a bit easier too, to be like, oh, what would I need when I'm away? What do I like when I go to different places? And so, yeah, put yourself into that story for a bit, but crafting that story, making it, showing the pictures that are real, but really making it look beautiful and welcoming. Um, when you talked about the reviews, I was just thinking, okay, there's also a marketing piece to this. Like, it's also not passive because there are some things that we have to do in order to get the space rented. How much do reviews play into either both like the short term versus the long term rentals?
Yeah, I think reviews are essential. And long term is different because there will be so few people who see that, because the turnover can be anywhere between 6 months and 6 years. I mean, so it's not so much a play in that area. It is in the midterm rentals, and so we're talking about anything that's over 30 days, and it's absolutely essential in short-term rentals. So it's almost the most important thing that you can do is to create those 5-star reviews. And the fact that we've sustained those for 25 years is a huge accomplishment as a professional. And it's absolutely about taking care of that customer. And it starts with making sure that the property that you're delivering is clean, current, and contextually relevant. If we can put together 3 C's there, and that's part of the story that you're going to tell when you're crafting your story, is what is the context? Because especially in a short-term rental, you have to think about people coming in from away and they think they might know, but they don't really know. So, really, where are you? What's really around you? What's this about? What's this experience going to be like? You need to think about it as an experience as opposed to just an accommodation, a roof over somebody's head. It really is an experience. So again, when I come back to that little ADU that we had in our sort of rural home in Maine, I didn't think anybody would come to relative to Acadia National Park, where our second home is. Um, when I looked at the broader context, oh, okay, well, we're easy to the White Mountains. We're easy to Boston. We're very easy to one of the most rich restaurant and dining experiences in New England. And you can go to Acadia National Park. Like, think about the context, the way that somebody from the outside would want to understand.
Mm.
And you have that privacy and that rural experience. And a lot of people have that dream, whether or not it's your dream anymore to live where you are, or you're so used to seeing it. Think about what it's like for someone else who hasn't ever been, and make that part of your story.
Yeah. And when it comes to reviews, do you just hope they give you a review, or is there a strategic follow-up process that you've put in place to ensure that they do give reviews?
Well, you absolutely have to have a strategic follow up. So you want to respond to everyone. So you're right, it's not 100% passive. And you want to try to spin a little bit if you do have some negative feedback. And what I mean by that is you want to kind of reframe what the experience is so that the next person who's reading that review is focusing on the positive that that reviewer left. The thing that's very interesting about the disruption that Airbnb brought in is Airbnb brought in bi-directional reviews. So it's not just the homeowner that's being reviewed, it's also the guest. And that really changed the game from the way that HomeAway and Vrbo and Booking.com used to do it, where you used to have only the host being reviewed. And so guests might be feel free to be a little more negative than they would when they now realize that they are also going to be reviewed. So the level of, I don't want to say professionalism, but certainly courtesy has increased. So people might be a little more hesitant to be scathing and a little more fair and a little bit more balanced. So you will frequently get a review where someone will say something positive as well as a negative, or a little bit of a feedback. So you can focus on that positive, but acknowledge the feedback or anything negative, and say you're going to take that as feedback and improve the property. Now, that's really helpful for the next person because they know that you're listening and that you care. And that's what is informing their decision. So reviews are very much part of marketing. You've got that listing in the beginning, but then you've got the guest interaction, and then you've got the reviews, and you can do it all from your phone. You just have to do it.
I love it. So, such a cool I love getting this insight to see, like, what are the possibilities? What are some ways we can create some more income and also be a blessing to others? Because I'm guessing that your space is a blessing, for those who rent it, right? So that's what we're trying to do too. We're being kind of, it's a servitude in a way. We're allowing them into our space. We're blessing them with a place to live that's beautiful. And so I know that faith plays a role in what you do as well. And so I'm curious to hear how does faith help you approach your business decisions, especially when things are hard? Because I'm sure that sometimes it's not rented out, and you're wondering when the next person is going to come, or if there is some unknown, or you have a guest or a renter that maybe isn't the best fit to be in there. Like, how has faith helped you in those situations?
Well, in those situations, I really try to up level my thinking and try not to take it too personally or get hung up on what it looks like immediately, and trust that there might be a higher reason for this to be happening, or a higher context in which it's occurring. So there can be a time where you have a guest. We had one guest, right? We had one property up at Acadia because we owned several by the time we were done. And like, just as the last guest, I'm not kidding, before we decided to turn that into 100% private, no longer renting property, turned out to be just a negative
Oh
experience.
no.
I had never had someone like that who was unhappy before they arrived and complaining. and then got there and complained. And she just had so many negative things to say. I just had to ask her to, find a different property at this point, even though they had been there overnight. Um, that felt like an indicator to me that even though that was an unpleasant experience, it was a reinforcement that we had made the right decision to let that go. And I think that, faith in the process, what is this really about? What is it really teaching me? Like if there is a situation where we have owned multiple property over the years, but sometimes a town will change its regulations, and something that was fine 10 years ago is no longer fine, and now you have to change that. In the moment, that can feel painful, but if you again think about what the greater context is, um, in the end, we have a much better property as a result of making the changes that conformed with these new regulations. So I think that it's important to level up my thinking, think about that greater context. And in fact, in the context of rentals altogether, we keep using Acadia National Park area as an example where we started. In the beginning, 25 years ago, short-term rentals were welcome and not as abundant as they are today. But over time, it's become a crowded space, and like many towns have suffered from the introduction of so many short-term rentals, it's changed the composition of the quality of life and of the residents themselves. So workers have a difficult time finding a place to live. Seasonal workers have a difficult time finding a place to live. And so that's why I think that it's really important to understand also what are the priorities of your community when you're looking in. And I think when we think about our greater context in, humanity, not just about ourselves, what is important to the community, and do you want to be positive influence in that, or do you want to just take everything you can, even though that will be detrimental? So that can be a part of the decision making, which is why I'm an advocate of choosing what's right for you. We talk about running your own race, right? We talk
Mhm.
about Romans 12:2, right? We talk about making sure that you are choosing what's right for you and not what the mainstream is. So everybody may be saying short term rentals, and that might be right for you, and that may be fine. But a midterm rental might be better for your lifestyle and for your spiritual sense of well being, especially if you care about the community that you're in. Or a long term rental might be a better solution for you, especially if you do want more passive income. So, uh, choose the path that's right for you, that feels right, and have faith that listening to yourself and that truth is the better path for you.
I like it. It's all about, again, going back to capacity and season. What season are you in? What's going to work for you? How much can you effort can you put in? How active do you want it to be? And I
Right.
actually wasn't even thinking about mid-term rentals. Like I always have in my head short term and long term. I never even thought about the fact that there are some mid, like 6 month, year, 3 month, whatever it is for those who are like seasonal workers or things like that. That could be a huge blessing for somebody. And it also could help if you're in a season where you can't be a caretaker every week, that then you have that space rented and you can like just have that ease knowing that you have that income coming in and you're blessing someone.
And absolutely. You're blessing someone because there's a service to that. Think
Mhm.
about the teachers, right? Think about also there's a group of healthcare workers that we have temporary assignments, and they need a place to stay, but for 3 months, for 6 months, when they're filling in for staff, and you're performing a service by enabling them to come. Also, people who are thinking about relocating to the area, so they don't know exactly where they want to live, where they want to buy, or maybe they're building a house and they need time for that to happen. Now they don't want to rent forever, but they know they need more than a week. So a midterm rental can be a really good solution for a lot of different groups.
I love that. Now, as we wind down, I'm curious, what would you say to the listener who's sitting on a spare room or a spare space that they could turn into a rental of some sort, but maybe they're feeling unsure or afraid or like it's not the right season, what would you say to them?
You can do it. And if you have any doubts or you have any questions, give me a call and I'm happy to talk with you about them and your specific situation because it really can be beneficial and it doesn't have to be too much. And we can talk about the pros and cons for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that you're gifting my listeners with is a free 40-minute rental strategy consultation. So if you are sitting on this and you're like, ooh, maybe this could be good, but I have a lot of questions. I just don't know if it's right for me. This could be a perfect thing to get in with Joy. So, Joy, tell us a little bit about what those rental strategy consultations are, and then we will leave the link in the show notes. And what you'll do is use the code Clarity for you, and it's the number 4 and the letter U. So Clarity for you, and you'll get that complimentary from Joy today.
Yes, absolutely. So what that is it's a one-on-one, 100% personalized, no sales push call about what it is that you want to talk about on this subject. So what do you know? What do you not know? What are your questions? What are the answers you're seeking? And there's a little bit of an intake form to help you to clarify your thoughts before you jump on the call so we can really make sure that we use that 40 minutes to your advantage. And we can answer any questions you have, short, mid, long term. We're not accountants or lawyers, but we have a lot of experience with those fields and can help you understand what questions you need to ask your advisor so that you can put together a solution that works for you.
Yeah. So if you're feeling the nudge, get on a call with Joy. She's amazing. And I know that if I turn any of my spaces into rentals, I'm coming to you to help me out. I'm curious, what's next for you and Mindful Rental Pros? What are you working on now?
So, what I'm working on now is broadening that call to action to think about what's right for you in your season and to think about rentals in a broader context and in the context of aligning to your community values. So it may not always be a short-term rental that is the best solution, not just for the person, but also for the community. And that creates a better whole. So I want to get that message out as opposed to, I think what a lot of short-term advocates do is try to change local regulations to align with short-term rentals. And I think for my belief system is rather than try to get them to change their minds, why don't we adapt to what the community needs really are? And I think that's a more important message to carry out, to be more mindful about how you operate for yourself and for the well-being of those around you.
I love that. Thinking about the community, because I think that's something that I'm very interested in is surrounding myself with my community and thinking, what can I do here? Not just because I'm an online business owner. I'm online all the time, but what can I do in my community? How can I serve there as well? And how can I bring my business or my giftings or my skills into the community itself? And that's just something that I think is really cool that you are focused on as well, Joy.